I'm live. Can anybody hear me? Let me know if you can hear me. Because I've had trouble with this in the past. There are three people here. Hello, delighted to have you here. Um, uh, delighted to have you here, and I seem to talk even when there's no one around. But I'm really glad to have someone around, or else I could be a madman. Um, uh, that's actually that's actually really true. Um, I have a few friends who still talk about how they don't care about other people's opinions, and that's half true with me. Um, I'm very selective about whose opinions I care about, but I do need to have some. Hello, Jeff. Great to have you here. Hello. um, but I do have to have some people uh, whose opinions I care about, or else there's a good chance that I'll go off the deep end and become crazy and wouldn't even know it. I think that relates to something that's pretty significant to me. It came up in some exchange with a comment thing this morning. It's about I take self-reporting bias really seriously. That is, I don't think any of us are the authorities on who we are and what's really going on with us, and that includes me. So I do need some triangulation. I do need a few other people around who will tap me on the shoulder and say, "Jeremy, you've lost it." Who I believe. There are lots of people who say that who I don't believe. So it's a complicated thing for me. I question your yes. So I can question my own sanity, and then I can do a thing where I second yes myself. I had an experience with someone recently. Hey, our room six. I'll figure out how to pronounce your name. Um, uh, so it's what I call second yesing, which is um, I had someone this week do it, or last week do it intensely with me. It's I've introspected and I give myself a clean bill of health. You know, am I crazy? Well, I checked with myself 3 times, and every time I said no. I am yes, I am sane. So questioning one's own sanity is crucial, and so is checking in with some folks um, who you trust. But it's complicated. I do not consider there's no way I could guarantee that I'm not insane. Um, I can check with myself. I can check with others. Um, I keep my own counsel, but I also keep my own counsel on whose counsel to keep. I have to do that. I think we all do. Hey, Shirley, good to see you. And no matter what, we could be wrong. And I think that that's kind of related to the this theme that I chose for this week's conversation. Irony is the truest medicine. And what that is I've now allowed myself. I've created the first episode. I haven't published it yet of a long-winded, full-throated podcast. And it's like I do all this work to make short presentations, videos. I've done blogs, all of that. But I wanted to just allow myself to not care about audience attendance and how to appeal to them and how to deal with their limited attention span and just verbalize. And yeah, I mean, to lay out the whole worldview that I've cultivated over these years. Whether it's insane or not is not mine to say. That is, I'm not the authority on whether it's good. It is nonetheless doing something that I think is a little different, and therefore at 69, not knowing how much longer I'll have, uh, it it's nice for me to just allow myself full recording time. So the first episode is like 40 minutes long, but it's on this thing about irony as a super as the truest medicine. And so I'm just going to start with that because that's the title of this thing. What do I mean by irony? Well, there's ironic situations. What do we mean by our ironic situation? I've read books on irony and all of that. And my best guess at what irony means is outcomes the opposite or the reverse of what's expected. And so the question is there any way to avoid that completely? So you never have ironic situations. You never have a situation in which the outcome is the opposite of what you expected. Could you have a complete formula for living that prevents you from having any ironic situations? Um, Try this out as just kind of a rough example. Imagine that you're an organism struggling for your own existence. It shouldn't be hard to do. That's what you are. But imagine that you're a really simple one and you're sailing to survive. Let's say you're a water bug or something like that, and you want the formula so you know which ways the winds will change, because that way you can get where you're going or you can stay alive or whatever. Um, but is there a way to eliminate all potential for capsizing? And I don't think there is. So what is an ironic attitude? It's accepting that there will be ironic situations. We can do a lot to minimize them, but we cannot eliminate them. And that's why I think that irony is the truest medicine, but also I would have called it dire-ony is the truest medicine, because it's not a joke. It's half a joke, and it's also deadly as hell. It's dire, so it's dire irony, and that's really where I live, and that's how I have to think about my own confidence that I'm not insane. How I have to question my own sanity. Obviously, I could check with myself. I could question my own sanity, and I could rely on others to be useful sounding boards for my sanity and be completely insane or completely wrong. That is, I operate on an assumption that I think is kind of the heart of the scientific method, which is the assumption that I could be spending my entire life barking up the wrong tree. I do think of science as a search party. We go out and we're ferreting in all sorts of different directions looking for an explanation of what's true. We're doing that from this biased position as human beings, that is, we want to feel good about ourselves. We just want the truth, but it better be flattering. I mean, we got that bias that we're all dealing with. And then we go out and we try to figure out what's true. And I read lots of intellectual history of people I admire, even though they proved wrong, and sometimes dangerously wrong. I mean, and I have so much admiration for them trying. And so here we come full circle to Jeff Cheney's point about trying beings. We are trying. We're trying. There is Yoda was inspirational, but completely wrong. There's only trying. Um, so there's that. Okay, so it's a Saturday morning. It's a hello to everyone. It's a sunny day here in Berkeley. I'm heading off to Vienna next week for just total delight. Not something that happens typically in my life, but I've been offered an all expense paid trip and a luxury hotel in Vienna, Austria, for a 5-day conference. I'll be going with Terrence Deacon, who is my research colleague, and we've been thinking about this conference. It's a conference on origins of life. It's funded by the Templeton Foundation, which I don't know if you guys know about these guys. A lot of money from a guy who founded one of the big mutual, I think it was Fidelity. I can't remember which one he founded. Sir John Templeton. He created this foundation that is an attempt to get science and spirituality talking to each other. I've written full proposals to them that have been rejected. They're from my perspective, the funding is, we just want the truth, but it better be spiritually flattering. That is, they're hoping that science will demonstrate that there's this other spiritual realm. Now, not everything that's funded by them has that axe to grind. This group will be fabulous that way. There are a bunch of people who are showing up for it. One of them got $5 million from Templeton Foundation to work on teleology, naturalizing teleology. So teleology is what I'm talking about with a trying being. Trying beings are what we call teleological. Teleological is you can say it's the teleology is the study of what purpose is, what end directed behavior is, what goal directed behavior is. By the way, that clock behind me is a gift from a friend of mine who I met through these kind of circumstances. It's the what is it? The Institute of Funny Walks clock. So if you're wondering what the heck's going on with that thing, it's a very funny walk. Anyway, so teleology, end directedness, what we interpret from Aristotle as final cause, that for which something occurs. Big old question, and I'll mention it since that's what this conference is about, trying to naturalize it, and a bunch of people who are trying to do it. There, you could call them biophilosophers, which is sort of what Terry and I are, but sort of not. We're more like scientists working on big philosophical questions, or at least Terry's a scientist. I don't know if you could call me a scientist or not. Some people think of science as exclusively empirical, lab testing or running experiments and sort of. So by that standard, I'm not. I mean, I do thought experiments, but I've never been a bench scientist. Terry has been. There's Deacon's law in neuroscience. So he was actually, he paid his dues that way before he got interested in these big philosophical questions. But anyway, teleology, just give you a history of this concept of teleology. So there seems to be purpose in the universe, right? At least beings are trying to do something. So the way that Aristotle frames it up, there are four causes, four possible explanations for things. One is material cause. It's the material that stuff is made of. One is efficient cause, which is cause and effect. This thing hits that thing and makes it move. One is formal cause, and one is final cause. So formal cause is, so the way this is often taught is there's the building materials, that's the material cause. Then there's the efficient cause, the nail banging of building a house. There's the formal cause or the blueprint, and then there's the final cause, which is that for which the house was built. And so for the longest time, we've assumed, well, everything has a formal cause. It's either the goal that God has in mind, or or in Aristotle's terms, it's a prime mover, whatever got the whole thing going in the first place. And then during the Enlightenment, a bunch of folks said, wait a second, that's all bullshit. How could you have a final cause would have to be the past causing the present. How does that work? Sorry, the future causing the present. That is, if you're building a house in order to live in it, that means that living it in the future will cause the present building of it. That doesn't make any sense. And so we have been living in an era in which there's been a kind of a strong attempt to say final cause doesn't really exist. Like, I think of it as like the lost cause. All there is efficient cause and material cause. So there's a conference of people that Templeton is bringing together to talk about that question. What is agency? What is purposeful behavior? And you could say, how did it emerge from nothing but purposeless physical chemistry? And so it's been interesting preparing for this conference we'll go to next week. Have to be really fluid because we're presenting towards the end of the conference, and we don't want to say our theory competes with yours. We want to say our theory is a way to explain what you are describing. So we'll see how it goes. Someone says, I love the term trying being as it draws curiosity to seek a deeper understanding of all of us. Amen. That's if you've followed my work, that's all that's going on here. I'm a guy who had the latitude and safety to go through some midlife crises, and rather than embrace something that was reassuring right out, I was able to turn my attention to what I am. Best guesses. Like I wanted to join the search party that I had thought had the most promising approach to figuring out what the actual fuck I am. Um, and it ended up, I mean, you could say I had the appetite, the aptitude, and the opportunity to follow this out. And like I said earlier, I could be barking up the wrong tree all life long, but it's so satisfying to have a tree I'm barking up. And it's a tree that doesn't resolve it. So much of what is offered in the way of explanations for what we are and what we're trying to do is pat. It's what we would call scientifically complete. That is, here is the last word on what you are and what you should do. And whether it's consolidated into a sacred text or a meme, it doesn't matter. It gives you the comfort of resolution. And my approach turned out to be different. I didn't set out to do this, but it ended up being ironic. By which I mean, there is no completeness. I posted it this week as Eureka, I solved reality. It's unsolvable. Um, and I mean that in all three directions. That is, you discover that the bedrock pulls the rug out from under itself and under us. This is what we call recursion. So anyway, that's what I ended up doing with myself because I was seeking a deeper understanding of me and all of us. And actually this transition to all of us is really important for me. I I had 5 years of 4-day a week psychoanalysis starting at age 8, and then again I had 4 days a week, 5 years of it starting at age 35. And I didn't the psychoanalyst, it's a Freudian analyst, Jewish culture, you know. Um Freudian analyst never said I graduated, and it didn't feel very Freudian to me. The guy didn't say anything. All I did was lay down on the couch and introspect, and it was pretty ugly in there. I didn't like seeing the shit that was going on with me. So I would laugh nervously at it. I'd fall asleep in the middle of sessions, all of that, and then the transition for me happened when I got to this thing of understanding all of us. You've probably heard me say it before. Forgive me for repeating myself. It goes without saying, but bears repeating. My big transition was from what's wrong with me to what's up with us. So I love the term trying beings as it draws curiosity to seek a deeper understanding of all of us. Thank you for that. That's what this conversation is for. Um, And you also understand that trying beings is a double entendre because I'm talking about all of us as trying beings, but there are also, as you well know, beings that try our patience, um, assholes or absolutists or that whole thing that I study in psychoproctology. And yeah, that's a big part of this too. So you've also heard me say, it goes without saying, but bears repeating, there are two kinds of people, those who do and those who don't recognize that we are all the same. I'm both. And that's some of the tension I have to live with. Is that and I did something 2 nights ago. It was funny how all this came about. Um, this is just a lovely luxury of my life, is that I've got all this media for recording stuff, and when an idea comes to me, I just get to record it. So the other night, I've been off of nicotine for 5 weeks, maybe 4 or 5 weeks now. I'm impressed with how easy that was. I don't think it would be as easy if it were cigarettes or anything smoked. I was on the nicotine pouches that the teenagers like so much. Got right off that, mostly off of pot, but occasionally I try it again. The reason I'm mostly off of pot is I'm trying to lose some weight and the munchies were getting to me. I'd smoke only in the evening. I never smoked during the day. Um, but So I also have been purging my house of a bunch of furniture. It's like doing what it's like being in attendance for what my children would have to deal with after I die. No, we've been purging lots, and this one guy came over to pick up a free mattress from me and a couch. Um, he said, I'll bring you some sativa. This is Berkeley, where you talk like that. So I talked a tiny little bit. It didn't make me feel very good. And then last night, I recorded a thought that was fresh with me. You might have seen this. I wish more people did. It's an interesting video. I just get to create stuff that comes to mind, like on the fly. No, this was 2 nights ago. This was 2 nights ago. But it was the fiercest communication I've ever made to the Trumpists. And it starts out with me saying, "I'm like you. I'd probably like you. I fucking hate you because you deny that you're like me. You and I go on, and it's vivid. Can't, I don't think, tell that I'm stoned. I'm hardly stoned. Oblivion liked that video. Good. I'm glad to hear it. I'm glad to hear it. Yeah, it's a different style of communication. I'm trying out all sorts of things these days. Okay. So anyway, all of that. Okay. Katie, Karen, nice to have you here. Uh, Maybe you're building a house just to see if you can, and maybe we're all overthinking everything. Good morning. This is Karen. Um, yeah, lots of people say that I'm overthinking. I get that one lots, and I have two responses to it, uh, depending on who says it. And this is not my response to you, Karen. Well, half of it is. This half is, yeah, I'm overthinking just right for my taste. But sometimes I tell people, yeah, and from my perspective, you're underthinking. I wouldn't say that to you, Karen. Um, I'm freed up to think. And what you said doesn't solve it. So try this out. Maybe you're building the house just to see is future oriented, just to see if you can. Um, just to see is future oriented. So you haven't actually resolved this thing about the future causing the past. But we're not all overthinking. And if you wanted to say we're all overthinking, you're joining interesting ranks to do that. You're joining uh, the Buddhists. You're also joining the Trumpists, um, and I'm not joining either. Uh, but I can definitely see why it would make sense to join either. If my life were fuller of other obligations, yeah, what I'm doing would be considered overthinking, and there would be major advantages to not thinking further. Um, this came up in an interesting conversation with a good buddy of mine last night. We were taking a walk after one of those research meetings that we do, and she said that she had seen a philosopher talk about how understanding ourselves is available to all of us and is the source of happiness. And I said, I agree wholeheartedly with that. And she said, "What do you mean? What's the other half? I mean, what's wrong with that?" I said, "Well, yeah, it's available to all of us. I don't think it necessarily brings happiness." And she said, "But that's what you do all day." I say, "Yeah, that's what I do all day because it brings me happiness. But if I was born intensely unfortunate, like really bad parenting and really handicapped by social standards, um, like ugly and dumb and malformed and whatever, would understanding my situation bring me happiness? I don't assume so. I don't assume that the truth sets you free. And it was hard for her to take that in for a moment, but she's someone who's beginning to understand that I only work in terms of paired opposites. This is the ironic thing. This is the dire irony of it, is that I'm recognizing that there's ironic situations. So if I have a formula that resonates with me, that makes me feel like, oh, okay, well, understanding myself will set me free. The unexamined life is not worth living. The truth will set you free. If I buy that, I don't want to just buy it. I want to recognize that it's half the story and that there's the other half of the story, which is not knowing the truth will set you free. That the examined life is not worth living for lots of people. Um, uh, okay, so um, yeah, so it was an interesting exchange, and also she's someone who has been influenced by the various varieties of cognitive therapy that have been around a while, which is you know this, you've probably heard this, and it's come up over and over, um, which is if you don't feel good, tell a different story. That is, reinterpret reality a different way. Again, I think that's half true, but it is also how you go crazy. That is, it's how you it's another name for denial. In it, it can be denial. It can be a way to bring relief, but relief isn't the only thing. That isn't the only goal in life. Sometimes you have to face reality and not reassure yourself. So and so she's a fan of it. So when she said, "How can you say that? How can understanding ourselves should be the source of is an available source of happiness for everyone. Look, that's what you do with your day, Jeremy." And I'm saying, well, but you know the other half of this because you have been a fan of this approach, where if you're uncomfortable, tell yourself another story. It's related in a way to postmodernism, the idea that these are all just stories. There's just stories, and no story's better than any other story. And so tell yourself a superior fiction. That's what the Trumpists are doing, and it's not going well. So there are advantages and disadvantages to being able to tell yourself comforting stories, and I like to keep both possibilities in mind. And it's also why I am such a fan of off-jerking or exercise or strategic gullibility or optimal illusion or safe escapism. I think we need to be able to tell ourselves comforting fictions in order to get by. And the question then for me is how to do that right, not how to do it wrong. I mean, not do it wrong. Uh, this came up yesterday. Oh, I know why. In my video that I put out a couple of days ago, in which I'm saying I hate Trumpists because they won't admit that they're like me. Um, uh, several people commented both on YouTube and on TikTok. I don't hate them. I don't hate. Some people said, hate is beneath me. I said, I know that story. This is very common. Nancy Pelosi said, I don't hate Trump. She's a Catholic, so she doesn't hate. Um, I just don't buy it at all. And I'm offering something different. I don't think there's anything wrong with hate. I think the question is where you point it. And I think that you stunt your growth on where to point your hate if you do the grandstanding of pretending that hate is beneath you. It's the same thing I think about ego. A lot of people are proud that to talk like egotism is beneath them, and I think that stunts growth on ego management. I have an ego. I have not met a person who doesn't. Not Mother Teresa, not Jane Goodall. I don't think there are people without egos. I knew Ram Dass personally. He had an ego. He kind of was an inspiration for recognizing that you're better off admitting that you have an ego than pretending it away. Um, he was actually pivotal in in my transition out of psychoanalysis. I heard him speak at a small conference I was attending. This was a time when I'm in my mid-30s and I'm seeing a psychiatrist 4 days a week. Been doing it for 5 years, a total of 10 if you add the 5 years I did at 8. And he says this thing that was part of his shtick. Everybody's got a shtick in this game. I certainly have shtick. I mean, a lot of what I say is stuff that I've said before. It's one reason people get turned off to me. They say it's like talking to a podcast. Well, yeah. But he had this one riff that I found very useful. I mentioned it before, goes without saying, but bears repeating. He says, I had 10 years of psychoanalysis. I studied psychology and became a full professor of psychology at Harvard. I studied with every top Indian guru, and I've taken all of the psychopharmaceutical drugs, and I haven't lost a single one of my neuroses, he said. He said they've just gone from being these overwhelming, imposing forces in my life to Snoids. They're these little irritating gremlins, like inner trolls. They stop by, I invite them in for tea. That's what he said. And Snoids is actually a character. Look up Snoid, Snoid, on Google, and you'll see R. Crumb created a wonderful character that is a Snoid. And the Snoid it looks a lot like, I mean, I know that Ram Dass was referring to the R. Crumb character. He invites him in for tea. So that was the pivotal comment that actually made me realize I'm done with psychotherapy. Yeah, I love Crumb too. He's important. I have, it turns out, a pantheon of romantic cynics, people who are really important to me, and our Crumb is in there. These are people who are deeply romantic and deeply cynical, or deeply cynical. It's actually another, romantic cynicism is another name for Dire-ony. As is, I have over 1,000 blog articles I wrote for Psychology Today under the name ambigamy, insights for the deeply romantic and deeply wary. And that's where I actually want to live. I really want happily ever after for all of us. And I really want to face into the reasons why it doesn't happen. And that's where I want to live. I want to live in that tension between romance and cynicism. Our Crumb is a master of it. I could list a bunch of others. I'll list a few. In an incomplete list for me. Philip Larkin, the poet, knocks me out this way. Randy Newman knocks me out this way. Sharon Olds, a poet, knocks me out this way. Mark Twain, Ben Franklin, Ambrose Bierce. These are romantic cynics. They're not plain straight up cynics. You can tell their hearts are on fire. There's a Buddhist line I like this. Though my heart is on fire, my eyes are cold as ashes. I like that tension. Build it to last 100 years, be ready to leave tomorrow. That's a Quaker saying. I love that stuff. I love the tension. And Karen, if I was living a different life, I would not love the tension. I couldn't afford the tension. I have to factor in that this life is different. And I don't want to feel guilty about it. I want to use it to the max. And for me, that's why I think it's the truer medicine. I'm not saying it makes you happy, but I do think that tension between really yearning for a better world and really paying attention to why it doesn't happen, studying why it doesn't happen. Another way I talk about this is as I'm a negative optimist. A positive optimist is straight up, it's a tensegrity. It's got a lot in common with tensegrity. Bucky, in his own way, is also a romantic cynic. Having multiple, you to like an aggravating bully. I thank the bully for helping me find The right therapist? Yeah, no, I had a similar experience this week. Uh, Shirley, I thank someone who I was trying to reconnect with for savaging me. I thanked him for the clarity that there's no reconnecting with him. Anyway, yeah, tensegrities are part of it too. And Bucky was a really important. Buckminster Fuller was a really important early influence for me. Probably more romantic, more positive romantic. Remember, he's got world games, and you're trying to figure out how to make the world a better place. Um, he and but yeah, so he was more of a positive optimist than I ended up. Um, but but the tensegrity concept, I think, is really important to me. Sustained intentions is really important to me still. Um, but here's the thing: I've called it being a negative optimist. I'm an optimist like an oncologist or a criminologist. That is, in order to make the world a better place, I'm paying attention to what makes it a worse place. Um, I'm 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 trying to understand where we get snagged, where we keep on falling into the same hole. Not out of cynicism, like to say, yeah, it's all bullshit, it's all just a tale told by an idiot signifying nothing. No, to better understand how you could bring about well-being. That's what an oncologist does. An oncologist studies cancer to make people healthy. A criminologist studies crime to make to reduce it. But the other thing about them is that they are post outrage and post angst about it. If you went to a criminology conference, you're not going to find people doing the melodramatic grandstanding of wringing their hands about the existence of criminals. They don't do that. They don't say, they don't. It's an outrage. I'm amazed that how could people do this? No, they're asking, how could people do this? That's negative optimism. That's romanticynicism. That's where I think the action is. That's where the juicy frictions are. That's where we want to be. What do you think of Osho? I can never. I think I've oblivious. Kyle just asked about Osho. I think I've looked at his stuff. So this is a really interesting question. How can you tell which public intellectuals are going to turn out to be douchebag assholes? Which free thinkers are going to turn out to be tyrants? Um, uh, I don't know enough about Osho, but my guess is if I'm thinking about the right person, I'm actually going to look him up. Yeah, I'm not a fan, but I could be wrong. I just don't know. I don't know. I'll have to look him up and find out more. Let me just take a look at it. Osho. Oh yeah, no, fuck that fucking shit. Not interesting to me. I did have a friend who was yeah, he's an interesting cat. He was a mayor of he was a gay mayor of a town in rural Texas who left and moved to Mexico to be with this gay lover and was a deep fan of Osho and a deep fan of Trump. And then he died of a heart attack suddenly. But I did a little look at oh, you're talking about Rajneesh. Is Osho Rajneesh? I'm unclear on it. Yeah, Osho. No, not a fan. Sorry. I think you sorry, I didn't know his name by Osho. Um, I've known a few people who were serious Rajneeshis and still stick with it. That's an interesting move. There are people who there's I've long thought that people will give up a dogma, but they won't give up the dogmatism. Dogmatism is incredibly addictive. That is that sense that you've solved reality. So I've known people who have abandoned a dogma and immediately switched to a different dogma. And I've known people who have rejected their teacher, the person who mainlined them dogma, but don't reject the dogma that they got from them. So it's like, I hate me, my my teacher trained me to that ego is evil and that I need to transcend it. My teacher turned out to be an egomaniac. Fuck my teacher, but I still believe in transcending uh, ego. It's wild, but I can see why. Um, so I think in a way that's my story, and I'm suggesting that there's a slightly different outcome. Um, I I had a dogma. I was a I was an elected elder at a spiritual commune, um, and then I dropped the dogma, and there was a pivot moment where I said, okay, well, what dogma am I going to? Where am I going to get my comfort and sense of exceptionalism now? And something that I'm grateful for in me said, I'm gonna look to evolutionary theory because that would be where I'm most likely to find out what the actual fuck I am. And then I got dogmatic about it because an I became a devotee of evolutionary psychology. And evolutionary psychology was, for me, it was a kind of cynicism. It was a kind of you can get a kind of cynical determinism out of, let's say, Richard Dawkins or the New Atheists. And then I met Terry, and he confused me again. And then I got really interested in, because Richard Dawkins and the selfish gene concept and all of that had a flavor of, fuck it, we're just our genes replicating other genes. I'm not a self, um, and I'm smarter than everybody else for knowing that I'm not a self. You still get some of that, but it was really a wave for a while. There was a postmodern, it's all bullshit, and I'm wise to know that it's all bullshit thing that I got into for a while. I mean, for example, uh, yeah, I mean, I used to go to these conferences, and it was a whole lot of it was you had a kind of a glorying in the cynicism of just looking at sexuality as genes trying to replicate themselves. And Terry says, yeah, but that doesn't actually explain what selves are. Um, a gene is not a self. It, it's not trying to do anything. So what are trying beings? And that got me confused. And now I live in this other realm. Okay. All right. So here we go. I'm going to take a look at some comments because I've been off on something. Let's see. I do love scorning hypocrites, but I'm trying to recognize what I am, just clutching my own pearls, watching others clutch theirs. That's where I'm trying to stay, is in this recognition that I don't want to yank them off of their high horse so I can mount their steed instead. So that's what I'm trying to find. And I don't think there's a resting place for it. It's this thing about it's self-undermining. That is, every time you make a one-upping move against a one-upping move, you've one-upped. It's what I call the last word paradox, which is that words make us crave last words that further words make impossible. So that's where I live. That's the irony of it. And for you to say that, MZ Nip, that's the start of an unending, an unstopping process, is to recognize that issue. That's what I mean when I say there are two kinds of people, those who do and those who don't. Recognize we're all the same. I'm both. Okay. I feel like a lot of us. Okay, Kyle, you may. Well, all right. Kyle, you say this about Osho or Rajneesh. Um, I'll give it a try, but I also want to. I mean, I'll give it a try because I have so much respect for you, my brother. But at the same time, um, I want to say that every time I slam some last word deification of some public intellectual or some imaginary name droppable god, um, uh, imaginary friend name droppable god, someone always comes on and scolds me and says, yeah, but you don't understand the real teachings. You miss all those other people, they misunderstand the sacred text. So know that if we ever have this conversation, my brother, it will be I will be keeping that in mind. And I would love to hear you say what you think is his teaching in a nutshell, because then we can parse it. Then we can say, okay, well, what does it actually mean? What are its implications? What's the other side of it? You are better than him, honestly. I feel like he set me up to appreciate you. That's another thing we should talk about here. Surely I might get to what you said in just a second, but I want to get to one thing. Kyle, you know, because you're in the music world, that there's a bunch of people who learn how to make a beat in GarageBand and recognize that actually they don't know the difference between that beat and some other beat. And anyway, the barriers to entry into pop music are lower than they've ever been, because you don't actually have to have technical virtuosity to program software. And so but they think they've landed. So they imagine that they're already pro musicians because they can make a beat in GarageBand. I think of that making a beat in GarageBand as a potential gateway drug. And I believe that a certain percentage of people do that. They use it as a gateway drug. So they're initially impressed that they can do it, and it gives them enough mojo and confidence to go on, and they end up studying music and getting better and better at it. I did that with evolutionary psych. I thought I'd solved reality when I found Richard Dawkins. And I went around dancing and prancing and preening about how I had figured out what was really going on. That's the equivalent of me making a beat in GarageBand. And then Terry comes along and confuses the shit out of me, and by saying, yeah, but none of this explains what selves and trying really are. And I think we can do it. We just have to be more rigorous about how we do. We have to explain it from just plain chemistry and nothing added, no dualism, no claim that there's some other substance called information. And I mean, I remember the original conversation with him where I was saying, we had just had our second meeting. He had invited me to come to Harvard. I was just a stray student who had a master's degree in public policy, but I was not a biologist. And I met him in his neuroscience lab. And then he drives me to the train station after that. I'm going back to Boston or something like that. And we're sitting in the car. It's freezing cold outside. We're sitting in the car because we have another hour and a half. And I'm just awestruck that this Harvard neuroscientist is willing to talk to me. And he starts raising the questions about what selves and trying are. And I remember my resistance to it, like, no, I can program a beat in GarageBand, dude. Richard Dawkins explains it all. This is a guy who'd worked with Richard Dawkins. He knew that he was a part of that world. And he was very patient with me and just continued to make the argument. And I realized, no, really, actually, I haven't explained it all. So there is a way how you do that thing, how you turn that kind of easy impressiveness into a gateway drug. Really interesting. And what goes on the inside of someone like Kyle, who goes from a teacher like Rajneesh to a vastly superior teacher. See where I'm going here? A vastly superior teacher like me. I'm superior. He wore red. I wear black. Okay, you understand the difference? It makes a very big difference. That's the question. Okay. I'm really kidding. All right. Love one another, yet the Abrahamic saga teaches accepting oppression as necessary and good. The irony, I am going to read you a quote from someone who I think is he's also in my pantheon of romantic cynics. His name is Arthur Koestler, and this guy was fucking brilliant. And he was not an academic. That's not where he worked. Let's see, this is a quote about what you're talking about, and I think it's been really important to me. If I can find it here, geez, yeah, I'm gonna look for it. Arthur Koestler. Oh, sorry about this, you guys. It's wow. Is it not coming up? Hold on a second. This will do it. Yeah, poor production values here. Jeremy should have these quotes right on hand. Jeremy Sherman, this will work. It's coming right up, I think. Oh, oh boy, I'm not finding it fast enough. There's a wonderful quote and he's pointing out that that love one another thing has never worked. We've been at it a long time, and it's not working. It's if anything, it's backfiring. Um, and that's it. I think he's right. And why? Because it immediately gets swallowed up and used by the ego as another form of dominance. So one way, I mean, my work is dripping with that message. So I don't want to be a romantic who says, look, if we all start loving one another on the count of three, it'll all work out. And I don't want to be a cynic who says, yeah, it's all bullshit. I'm trying to run this gauntlet between the two that is ironic. But check out the irony. This is the heart of irony is you apply something to itself. So listen to this. I am a champion of love and kindness and tolerance and acceptance of one another. I'm kind of an authority on it. I'm sort of a crusader for that. I am a crusader for not being judgmental. So I'll be the judge of who's judgmental. And it's anyone who judges me. That's where it's all gone. That's what happens to it over and fucking over. The love one another thing. It would have to go that way because we're not admitting to our selflessness, to our selfishness, to the selfishness that is in us from the beginning of life. All organisms are selves struggling for their own existence. They are all selfish. They're looking out for them and theirs. That's where life starts. Life does not start with this kumbaya. It's organisms struggling for their own existence. It's an incredibly unfair world. And we are trying to eke out some fairness within it. And any one of us can imagine a loving world, and every one of us is filled to brimming with hope. And we can all imagine a world that's loving by our standards. We could also imagine a rhinoceros in a tutu balancing the universe on its candy cane horn. The fact that we can imagine shit doesn't mean anything about what's practical. So what you end up in this Abrahamic tradition is people one after another. I mean, when you think about the Abrahamic tradition and how it's playing out in the Middle East, that's a good controlled experiment, and it's out of fucking control. It's just it's a mess, and every one of them is insisting they're the more loving. It's wild. So good. Kyle, I appreciate that. So anyway, the irony around that is interesting. And the irony is where I want to live with it. Have I ever read Zizek? Yes, I've read at him. I have not found him as deep as I haven't found the grit in him that feels like it's here's the difference that interests me. So when I first dropped the spiritual side and got into evolutionary, you could say biophilosophy, I was like a kid in a candy shop. It was so exciting to find all of these different theories about what we are in philosophy and biology, all that stuff. And I felt like someone who just figured out that sports is fun or the cars are fun. That is, I knew all the different models and makes. So I knew all the different players on teams and all that sort of stuff. And it was exciting. But at some point, it kind of got overwhelming. What I realized was I didn't have a good standard for deciding which theory was better than which. And that they all could make a good argument for themselves, all these different theories about what we are. Um, and a lot of them, including Zizek, I think, um, start with start really focused on humans and not much on what precedes us. It's almost like, well, you got chemistry, and then you've got life, which is like mechanical chemistry, but it's got natural selection, it's got DNA. And so it's kind of like machines. Animals are kind of like machines. And then you've got humans, and that's where all the action is. That's where you get consciousness, and that's where you get all sorts of. And so most philosophers are there. They really are focused on humans. And one romantic version of the philosopher is someone who treats us like we're completely different from organisms. So there's a romantic side, which is because we have reason, we could all be reasonable, we could all love one another on the count of three. That's one version of it. The other one is the cynical version of it, which is like we're just like animals, we're just like other creatures. It's a dog eat dog world, that sort of thing. But there's not a lot of work figuring out the continuity from chemistry to the simplest organisms to and what changes along the way. That is how change changes. And as a result, you'll get philosophers who have some kind of quirky panache or they're saying something daring and exciting. But to me, it's ungrounded. And to me, there's a part of me that wants a grounded account. Because without a grounded account, you've just got this kind of impressionistic manipulation of symbols. You're working with abstractions that are based on impressions of things. And by abstractions, I mean stuff as simple as information or motivation. Just think about motivation. I've mentioned this before. It's the core currency in the life sciences, the social sciences, in philosophy, in the humanities, is motivation. That is, organisms trying to do something. But if you ask any specialist, any expert, I have talked to top experts in the fields, in those fields, they can tell you what a motivation is. They can tell you that they basically assume that if they see effort, there must be motivation. So they're using a currency that to me is an unexplained explanation. And I actually want an explanation. That's how I can ground it. And so when I read Zizek, I might find some insights. I haven't yet. And so here's what I would say about him. If you're willing, here's my uh, here's my email for everybody. Uh, um, email me something that you think that you found moving. Um, uh, and I would be interested in it. Now, okay, and I'm also getting from something from Azrael Crowley about check out Human Destructiveness by Anthony Storr. I will take a look at that one on your recommendation. And remember where I'm coming from. Uh, there is a part of me that wants to understand what we are, even if we're doomed. I'm assuming I'm taking careful notes, even if this is the demise of humankind. But I don't want to rest there. I am a romantic cynic. I am a negative optimist. I'm paying attention to what doesn't work in my efforts to make it better. There is a kind of taking refuge in pious failure that doesn't interest me. So I'll take a look at Anthony's story, and I'm just reporting. Not my standards are my standards. They don't have to be anybody else's standards at all. I'm just taking a look to see if I can find that Kessler quote again. But what I'm saying is that there is a kind of book that is that just lays out what is going wrong with us and seems to almost revel in it. And there's a limit to that. I want insights into why we tend to not work very well. Boy, oh boy, normally I find it. All right. Let's see what else we have. Let's see, Reds Isaac. You were let's see. Someone spray painted the word selfish. Yeah, okay, so here's a question. So we have a word like selfish. It sounds hella bad. Um, this is yeah, you've heard me talk about this before. This is the big distraction that I think keeps us from the real questions. It's related to uh, the the lost causes thing, the last word thing. Um, you and I are having a conversation. Someone drops down the word selfish. It drops out of the sky. The word selfish. Someone says it. I say it, or you say it. Sounds bad. I duck it. Someone says the word kind. Drops down. Sounds good. I tuck myself under it. That's the tuck and duck move. That's what I think is in the way of careful thought. It's why it's very hard to have a conversation where we get as real as possible, is that we are too busy, understandably, but too busy doing the duck and tuck. You duck anything that sounds negative, you tuck yourself under anything that sounds positive. You don't even have to think about what the words mean. When you think about what the Trumpists are doing, it's nothing but that. It's nothing but that. It's conversation, if you even want to call it conversation. It's communication by smell. If it smells good, I spray it on me. If it smells bad, I spray it on you. That's all that's going on. And it's exactly what you'd expect from an organism that just got language recently and is using it much more functionally than they are referentially. That is, we use words for their function, their usefulness. We don't actually go to the trouble of defining them all the time. Like, yeah, I noticed this when I was writing the book on assholes, which is that we all use the term asshole, those of us who could, or whatever, some negative term like that. But we don't get around to operationally defining it. That is, how would you know the difference between an asshole and a not asshole? So this was the heart of that work was what is a butthead, since it can't just be whoever I happen to butt heads with or whoever you happen to butt heads with. So if we use language functionally like that, we're likely to just be playing the duck and tuck. That's what we're trying to do, especially because we're anxious um, and want to feel good about ourselves, and we'll take all the reassurance we can get. So someone says selfish, and we'll say, yeah, them, not me. But it's a really interesting concept to try to unpack. What is the word selfish? What do we mean by it? And once again, someone could use it in a theory, it could show up in that book. Osho could use it, or Anthony Storr could use it, or Zizek could use it. And we'd sort of all get a feeling off of it. Who would use it a lot is Eckhart Tolle, who makes me gag. That is, there's ego. He never gets around to defining it, from what I can tell. Never in a kind of a practical, concrete way, an operational way, so you could tell what ego is. All he does is it's hella bad, and anything he doesn't like is egotistical. I would say the same thing happens with the word selfish. And I'm saying, if we really want to get clear on this, we have to get clear on what we even mean by selfish or greedy. Take those two words; they're really complicated. Um, rodents collect nuts for the winter season. They don't know how long the winter season's going to be. If they're wise, they'll collect up an extra bit. That is, you want to collect more than a little. One thing that came to me this week is Occam's razor. This thing is that entities should not be multiplied more than necessary. Occam's razor is actually the opposite should be kept in mind, which is that entities will be multiplied more than necessary, and they kind of have to be. Sorry, this may be a little arcane. Well, here's what I mean. If we operated at a replacement rate, we wouldn't survive 3.8 billion years. You have to make more than enough to survive the slings and arrows of bad weather, long winters, et cetera, et cetera. So selfishness, guilt, greediness, these are complicated terms. They're not complicated at the far end. This last week, I've been reading the book, The Haves and Have-Yachts, which is yet another book on the psychology of the hyper-affluent. And their storing for a bad winter knows no bounds. I mean, you could make an argument that they might be right. By their own doing, they're probably going to be causing the demise of civilization. So, yeah, I can sort of see why they'd want a yacht and a helicopter and a place in New Zealand where they could survive it. That's sort of like the chipmunk. But there seems to be a pathology at the far end. But it gets really complicated in the gray area. How much is enough savings for someone to have before they say, I'm secure enough? How do we balance between what we do for our own self-preservation, which is the older game in town, and what we do for collective um, sustainability? And any one of us can grandstand about the selfishness and greediness of others. And I do plenty of that, but I also think it's a complicated issue. My creative started during my isolation this last year, dealing with my losing your son. Sorry to hear about losing your son. Surely I didn't know about that. That must be. I can only imagine. I can sort of beyond that because I've lost one too, but he's alive. Um, you're onto something, Shirley, that is important to me. There is my two midlife crises and my one post midlife crisis about a year and a half ago. I hated them. Um, they were painful and they were spurs to greater creativity. I wouldn't go so far as to say it's always darkest before the dawn. I mean, once again, that's half true. It's also darkest before death. I do not assume that all downs lead to creative growth. Um, I have a particular lesson in that. Uh, there was a time when I heard a Buddhist message that adversity is the teacher of the true way. And I felt guilty about not having had much adversity. I was 24 at the time, maybe, and immediately had a horrible accident. So that taught some things, but wasn't worth it. An accident of my own. It was my fault. Um, it was my. At least no one else was to blame. If anybody did it, it was me. Um, so I'm kind of sobered up on that idea that it's always darkest before the dawn, or adversity is a teacher of the true way. And yet, I think there's something to it. Um, uh, I like I like a line, the master makes use of all circumstances. This is a Taoist line. Um, I like it better than that's the universe trying to teach me something. I like it better than it's all it's all God's plan or it's all God's will. Um, I like the idea that the burden is on me to try to harvest what I can from rough times. Um, what lessons I can learn from it. Um, One way that this plays out is that there's a dialogue, I imagine, which is it's a stranger asks me, is this possible in the universe, for example, or in our world, is it possible for a mother to lose their son? Yeah, yeah, it's possible. Okay. Can you think of any reason why you would be exempt from that possibility? Say, no. And then the person says, so what does that tell you about the world we live in? And I think that has been useful to me when I'm dealing with such situations. Um, what can I learn from it? Once again, I don't run on hope. It's an unreliable fuel, especially these days. I pity the positive optimists who are going to continue to say, if we love one another, the world will work out. It's going to be harder to sound credible saying that stuff. I feel lucky to have lived through the 60s, 70s, and 80s when you could sound credible saying that stuff. I don't think that's going to be an easy job for them who do that. Trying to understand what we are, trying to catch up, that feels really. like the best use of our time, trying to understand what kind of world would yield this, what it is about us humans that tend this way. So yes, that kind of creativity, curiosity and productivity are better fuels for me than hope. I don't run on hope. It's an unreliable fuel. I run on curiosity and productivity, knowing that my curiosity could be wrong. My productivity could be counterproductive. That's the ironic situation. So all of that is there, and bless your creativity that came out of it, Shirley. Uh, Andrew, nice to meet you. Your ideas resonate very strongly with me. It's great hearing your take. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Yes, it's icing on the frosting for there to meet you, to meet people who who are who are curious in these directions. It's comfort. It's a reminder. It's a kind of reassurance. I wouldn't want it to go to my head, um, uh, but it is a comfort to have people who idea with ideas. It's a comfort to be with people who resonate with the ideas that resonate with me. That's a comfort. So I want to remind you all, we have the study group, the psychopractology study group is happening tomorrow morning. It happens every other week. It's happening at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. If you're not subscribed, it's an option. There are no prerequisites. I'll just remind you what this thing is. Um, it's a it's a group of people from all over the country and a few from far flung who are trying to figure out how to engage with people there's no talking to, with people who have gone herobotic, who are absolutists. That is, the absolutists in the original definition, which is that nothing can influence them, nothing can shape or change their minds. People who are in effect playing God or humbling themselves before a lord like Donald Trump or whatever, and therefore lording it over everybody else. People who have figured out the very simple formula for not caring about anything that's inconvenient to them. And this is a group that recognizes that our ways of dealing with them or not dealing with them aren't good enough. They're not working well enough. And that actually it's a really big challenge to figure out, how do you engage with people there's no talking to? How do you bring out the human in them? Either through poking them or coaxing them or seducing them or tricking them or fucking with them, whatever, because they'll be the death of us. That is, to us, the biggest question, or at least to me, the biggest question that humankind is dealing with is this one. How do you engage with people who are absolutists? Because we can't even get around to the other big real world problems we're dealing with as long as these people have charisma and they accumulate, they build upon themselves in their absoluteness. And it's got nothing to do with whether you're left wing, right wing, spiritual, religious, or anything. We're just talking about, how do you humbly humble people who will say or do anything to avoid human humility. And so what we do in this group is we get together, people talk about strategies they've tried, they tell stories of what they've tried or what they're trying out, and we reflect on those stories and see how can we do a better job of it, because nothing we're doing works well enough. And that's by design. An asshole or an absolutist wants nothing to work. That's the definition of absolute. Absolute originally meant dissolved away from all influences. That's what absolute zero is about. That is, it's dissolved away. Solute, that is like solution, like dissolved, and ab means off to the side. So these are people who are, so this is how power corrupts absolutely, is that there's nothing that could ever overpower, shape, influence it. That's the point. And when people go that route, then there's no adaptivity left. So this is a study group that just is being strictly practical about it. It's not an emotional support group. It's not an if I were in charge of the world group. And anybody's invited. There are no prerequisites. We just get together and talk about it. Some people sit and observe. Other people talk a lot. There's one fucking guy in this group who just can't fucking shut up. I tend to have something to say in response to everybody, and then I apologize for saying it, and then I say something else. I've been thinking lately that we have to accept the absolutes as they are and learn how to use that. Find the bright, shiny object to get them to be absolute in a better direction. That's interesting. We can talk about that tomorrow, Karen, or tonight. Um, uh, I'm not ready to resign myself, and not only that, I think the problem is harder than I did 2 weeks ago. Um, I'm not so there is this let me try this out. So, if I'm to paraphrase you, Karen, what I think you're saying is, these guys are last worders, they have a last word. They've got a dogma that they're addicted to, and, they're not walking their talk, they're grandstanding. They're on their high horse about this thing. And maybe the best we can do is get them to get on the high horse with a last word that's better for society. So I just want to connect that up to what Shirley said earlier about love one another. Um, Yet the Abrahamic Sabbath teaches accepting oppression as necessary and good. Irony. So I don't think it's going to work. That is, at least, I mean, we've been trying it for basically 4,000 years. That one where people are competing over which is the better absolutism. Now, if you're talking about finding bright, shiny objects to get them to be absolute about in a better direction, instead of a dogma, there is something that I totally agree with you about. It's the heart of my work with these guys, which is, what the fuck are you doing? Self-love is crucial, but get a room, don't let it go to your head, and zip the fuck up afterwards. Don't turn basic infrastructure into your circle jerk vanity project. Why the fuck are you doing that? Have you seen the quality of pornography these days? Have you seen the quality of AI pornography? Have you seen the quality of movies? Why are you trying to make the most boring and essential part of our reality into your vanity project? There are so many better, bright and shiny objects to get absolute about. Have you seen the quality of spectator sports? Have you seen the quality of video games? Um, so that if that's what you mean, Karen, I'm right with you. If you mean here, take on this other global, I've solved reality absolutism, I'm not with you. I don't think that hasn't worked well for three 3,000 years, 4,000 years. Shirley Crane, I've never gotten a reply when I asked Mega, oppression excites you. Yeah, that's interesting. I like your line there. I like that line a lot. One of the challenges that we deal with in this study group is that you barely ever get responses from them. They tuck in, they duck in, they they drop in, they drop their cliche talking point. No matter what you say, they rarely come back. I had one guy come back this week, but I think he might have been a bot. And he came back with just the same stuff. Well, that's what I'm saying. There's no talking to them. And I do think that some of this might have been learned through video games. Video games. I never was a video game player. I'm too old for that by just a little bit. I mean, I do a little bit of it in virtual reality, in with Meta 3, goggles and all that, but I'm not good at it. But I do have a sense that Xbox became this kind of hobby where you never listen to the shit talk being talked at you, except as other shit talk you can learn to talk to other people. You're not taking any of it literally about yourself. When someone shit talks at you, it's just a shit talkapalooza. It's just an orgy of shit talk. And that what's happened is that they transferred that over to responding with comments on videos. I don't think that so surely the challenge we're up against, the thing will be, that's part of the challenge we'll talk about tomorrow, is I never get replies. Whether I ask them a question, whether I carve them a new asshole, whatever. I never get replies from them. Um, and I don't, so it's very hard to tell if anything works on them. I mean, obviously, rounding them up and putting them through cult reform or putting them in jail or something like that, yeah, some actual physical consequences would make a difference. But short of that, my basic assumption is that verbal combat is a bulwark against violence. Yeah, so deprogramming and how to do that cleanly without it just becoming another reprogramming, really challenging questions. Um, yeah, I mean, it's like a Clockwork Orange deprogramming challenges. Um, but I do one thing I tried this week that I'll be talking about tomorrow is so I got this character Magnificent Mike. By the way, we'll be ending in 10 minutes. So if you've got any last minute things that I've been strategically avoiding talking about that you think it's high time I talk about and fess up to, now's the time to get me thinking about them. But so I've got this character I play called Magnificent Mike, and it's interesting that I should have found a medium that's not being used quite. It's not exactly parody. A lot of people are confused by what I mean. Um, let's see. You ah Good. Karen, I understand what you're saying. Let's talk more about that in the group tomorrow, maybe even this evening. Um, that sounds interesting and promising. But anyway, this week I started practicing. So people are. I've got liberals who are furious at me because they think I'm serious. I've got liberals who are confused about me, like the algorithm threw them off, and what were they doing seeing a Donald Trump pro-Trump guy? I played this Trump guy who is doubly self-unaware. He doesn't know what he's doing, but he also doesn't know that he's confessing to what he's doing. And I play it right on the edge. I'm not trying to be funny. I'm not trying to exaggerate. I'm trying to be who they really are. I think my best guess at what's really going on inside of them. And I also get hostility from Trumpists. I think some of them are people who actually believed me and then found out that I'm parodying them. And then some of them just notice that I'm an anti-Trumpist and they come on. They don't actually look at the videos. They simply troll me. But I am trying now, responding to them as if I am Magnificent Mike, that I'm still in character and saying, yeah, right, this shithead who made this video, and then I play it out. Nothing works with these guys, and yet I cannot take refuge in pious failure. Civilization's not gonna make it if we don't find out better ways to undermine absolutism. That's pretty clear. And what is absolutism? It's basically that duck and tuck game I described earlier, taken to infinity, which is if it sounds good, I tuck myself under it. If it sounds bad, I duck it. And I do that, and I don't just duck it, I shove it at my enemies. That is, I'm kind, I'm loving, I'm kind, I'm loving, they're mean, they have derangement syndrome. You can do that without ever thinking about words mean. It's strictly functional. As such, it's like animal braying. Okay, that question, oppression excites you, has been asked of Christians in the Bible justifying slavery, and the Christians will justify slavery or at least have to stop and think about it. I like that question a lot. That excites you, doesn't it? That's kind of fun for you, isn't it? I do think that narcissism is, by definition, sadomorphism. Narcissism. Sadomorphism in that there are two ways to self-elevate. One is by lifting yourself up, the other is by putting yourself down. All preference, all value is relative, better, worse. And so, obviously, to be a narcissist demands that you demote others and elevate yourself. And one thing I was thinking about last night, and I'll probably end here, is I've long said that what I'm trying to do with this thing about safe escapism or off-jerking or idsercise is to demote the highfalutin versions of it, like church, to an elevated status for all of them. So I actually don't see much difference between church and masturbation. And I think they're both of value because we need the reassurance we can get from fantasy life. So the idea that someone, I mean, I do see a difference, and it's you're very unlikely to get wisdom from masturbating. And you might get some wisdom, though probably some distorted wisdom, like half truths from religion, like that kindness solves everything. Um, but uh, but I was thinking last night, what I'm trying to do with everybody is take the high horse folks and demote them to an elevated status for all of us, and just appreciate the ironic predicament we're in. So I will end with this. For me, the height of intimacy is not sex. I don't, my experience of it, which was vast at a time, not lately, is it's very confusing what that's all about. It's a ritual of intimacy, but boy, is it confusing. No, for me, the height of intimacy is laughing and crying laughing at and with each other, and crying at and with each other. I'm just adding crying now, but I think it's part of it. Um, about being stuck in the human predicament. And I have to think about how crying fits into that. I've been saying for a long time that for me, the height of intimacy is laughing at and with each other, at being stuck in the human predicament. But I actually think just now, I'm just this minute, I was thinking, yeah, I have to figure out how to talk about crying at and with each other. Crying over the hurt that others cause to us and the hurt that we cause each other. I don't know, I'll have to work that out. And that's what irony is about. It's actually recognizing the human predicament, and how we're all bound up in it, trying to understand the human predicament better. For me, that doesn't start with Zizek or with Rajneesh or anyone who's working up at these high levels with these abstractions. It's trying to understand what I am, what selves and trying are, and how they started in nothing but simple chemistry, how they evolve eventually into animals with mobility and feelings, and how they evolved into humans who have those things plus concepts that cause that influence our feelings, scary concepts and reassuring concepts, and to really understand who we are that way, and to recognize that it's not about them, it's not about me, it's about us, and how to best stomach being us while we're here. And that's what got more interesting to me than pretty much everything else. I mean, it got more interesting to me than, this is a hard thing to say, don't take my word for it, than Who Loves Me. It got more interesting to me than that, I think. But that's the kind of bullshit that you get from people who claim selflessness. That's not the case. I still give a big fuck about who loves me and who doesn't. I am still really human, but I still think those questions I just described are really interesting, and they ended up becoming so interesting that they've given me less and less need to care. And this kind of comes full circle. I still care. This last week, I've had trouble. I had to wean myself off of someone whose opinion of me I cared about a lot. And I realized last week, no, that's over. That's over. But it's going to take me a while to wean myself off of it because he doesn't like me anymore. Um, so, yeah, I still care. But this business of keeping my own counsel and whose counsel I keep, and just trying to understand what the actual fuck we are. It's a joy if you can afford it. I thank you for affording it with me. Yes, getting people to understand each other on this life journey through humor and irony. Thank you, Shirley. Thank you, thank you. I'll see you, sweetheart, soon. It won't be next Saturday because I'll be flying to Vienna. hot dang. And I'll figure out when it's going to be. And I will see you tomorrow if you join the study group. If you're already part of it, see you tomorrow. If you're not part of it yet, you got my email address. Go ahead and email me, and I'll put you on the list, and you can join us at 9 o'clock tomorrow. It's free. I don't upsell. By the way, I will say this one last thing, which is I do offer private consulting services. I've got clients who really find it valuable, one-on-one. Some are dealing with how do they deal with bullies. Some are dealing with tough judgment calls in their lives, all of that sort of stuff. Get in touch if you're interested in that. I don't promote it much, but it's available, the one-on-one stuff. And in the meantime, see you next time.